edition of MMI Live. Today we are talking about why it may be necessary to transform the technology function within the enterprise with Kelly Kleinfelder. Kelly, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're so excited you're here, and this is a really unique topic. So we'll dive into why it's unique, but we'll get to that in a second. Before we get into it, though, I do want to make a quick introduction to Kelly. Kelly has a phenomenal track record as a visionary IT leader, building, organizing, and overseeing best-in-class IT departments. She has extensive experience in developing technology strategy, building and transforming technology departments, and leading development and IT operations. And our favorite component of that, driving compliance to all of those things. And beyond that, she's held various IT leadership positions in consumer services, retail distribution, and B2B verticals over the past 20 years. Kelly now provides strategic technology consulting to mid-market organizations as the managing director for Strategic Elevation Advisory Group. And one very impressive accolade, she is also the 2021 Philadelphia Large Corporate CIO of the Year winner, as presented by Inspire CIO. So quite an impressive background there, Kelly. we're obviously very excited to have an expert with your credentials here on the broadcast today. The reason that I said it was unique earlier that we're talking about transformation is a lot of times we hear about digital transformation. It's the hot button topic around, for the past 5 to 10 years, everyone wants to talk about digital transformation, but we're actually talking about a different type of transformation today. So why don't you give us a little intro of the type of transformation we're talking about?
Sure. So this is transforming the technology function within your enterprise. So we all know that technology is the foundation of most companies today. Whether you're a tech company or whether you're, a sales company or whatever, right? There is technology that is driving that business every day. And if your technology function, if your staff, if your department, if your leaders are not part of the bigger picture, right? Then your technology function is going to lag. And even if you want to do a digital transformation, you're going to be starting from way back beyond the starting line because your technology function within your company isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction of, you hear a lot of companies that want to go into that digital transformation that we're talking about, but don't necessarily have that foundational piece that you just described of being aligned to those partners in the business. In terms of identifying why it may be necessary to do that, are there any leading indicators or anything that you've identified over your years of experience that point to, hey, we need to straighten this part out first and get this foundation before we crawl before we run?
Right, exactly. So there's an IT maturity model with 5 levels in it, right? The first level, the way bottom basement is, unstable, right? That's where the technology function isn't supporting the business. Like things are just kind of a giant mess. The next level up from that is the firefighter mode. And that's where you're supporting the business, you're working through your tickets, your infrastructure is kind of stable sometimes, maybe not all the time, but when it does go down, you have procedures to bring it up. But again, constantly reacting to things. So then the next level, and this is where we start to kind of come out of the basement a little bit, is the trusted operator. And that is where your infrastructure is stable, your applications are stable, right? Your help desk ticket work orders are coming through. They're being worked on within their SLAs, they're being resolved. You have good data quality, right? So that's important. And that's that's the baseline, right? That's what I would call that starting line where you need to be. But where you want to be, and this is where these next 2 levels are where you could start to drive revenue and have a greater impact on the business. So the 4th level is a business partner. And And that is where IT is contributing to the expansion, whether it's through some revenue driving product or whether it's through just a partnership with the lines of business leaders to understand where they are, what they're trying to do. And they're looking to you to say, technology leader, how can we use technology to hit this goal, move this initiative forward? Also part of the business partner is you are using your analytics strategically as well. So you have good data quality, you have a data governance program in place, and those lines of business leaders are able to use that data to make strategic decisions. And then finally, where we kind of all want to be, right, is that innovator. And that is where technology is transforming the business through innovation. And that's like the pinnacle. And that you see a lot, that's like the Googles of the world and Meta, but there are certainly ways in a mid-market where that can happen as well. So, just some symptoms, right, of how you may know that it's time for technology turnaround, right? If you're running obsolete or old software, or you're, using old development technologies, if you have heartburn when you have to call the service desk, and that's clear, right? And I have been there. I have turned around a few IT departments, and I walk in, and the first thing the CEO will say to me is, I don't even call the service desk because they never solve my problem. Right? That's a telltale sign right there. If there's an abundance of shadow IT throughout the business departments, that kind of points to the fact that they had to go solve problems on their own because for whatever reason, they couldn't rely on technology to help them. If the CEO or the board sees it as just a cost center, not a value add. If there's been no IT innovation within the company over the last 2 years, if IT is not seen as a partner by the lines of business, and if IT is really just keeping the lights on, we are so way beyond that now in 2024. So those things, right? If you go through that checklist and you're like, yeah, I see some of that, then it is time.
It is time. I like that. I think everyone can resonate in some capacity in some organization that you've been a part of with the heartburn of calling IT. And yeah, I mean, I think to your point, you have these various stages as you're looking and evaluating that landscape of, okay, how far in the basement, like you said, are we? And where do we want to be? Right? You can't, I think the reality is you can't make that jump from we're deep in the basement, everybody has heartburn, we're keeping the lights on, right? To we're innovators in, without going through those various phases and those steps. And, to that end, can you share some ideas or what are some of the first steps of executing that transformation as, someone who's coming from, pure basement, everyone's got a heartburn in the organization. We're all taking Pepsi, not an ad. But how do we get to that innovator status?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a couple things that you could do, and this is all very tactical, right? The first thing, if you are the IT leader, I would suggest going to each of your peers with a questionnaire, and very simple, right? What are you working on this year? What have you not gotten accomplished in the last year or two, right? What are your challenges? What are your pain points? And then the question that you have to ask, and you're not going to want the answer, but you have to ask because it gives you a starting point, is what is your perception of IT?
Yeah.
Right? It's a scary question. It's hard. You can do it through a survey if you would like. Sometimes, an anonymous survey, people will be very candid. And if you're coming into an organization as, like the new technology leader, you're going to have an advantage, I think, because you have a different set of eyes. But if you've been in your position as a technology leader in a company for a while, then, you lose sight of some of this, or you can lose the perspective, right?
Mm.
So by asking the hard questions, right, you're going to get honest answers, and then you have a starting point, and internally, what do you need to work on for, on with the IT group as a whole?
Yeah, I think real quick, that's a really important, I think, distinction of, sometimes it can be easier to be a new leader coming into an organization because you can say, hey, we're starting fresh. We're going to make some changes. What didn't you like about how it was before me? But if you are that existing leader, there is a level of trust that you have to have with your peers and the folks that you're interviewing. Like you said, I mean, everyone always says, if you don't want to know the answer to the question, don't ask the question. But it's not really a luxury that we have if we're really looking for transparency and wanting to find out where we're starting from.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then some things you can do, and these go, I think, across no matter what those answers are from your peers. The first thing you can do is get your IT staff to start thinking like consultants, because when you want to get to that that level 4 where you're a business partner, you want to take a consultative approach to helping the business solve their problems. So if you don't have business analysts within the IT department, I would suggest maybe take some of your current staff and train them, turn them into business analysts. Or, if you can bring in a business analyst, depending on the size of your organization, that's great, because having someone sit in the technology function, whether it's the help desk, whether it's in the development group, whether it's in the project management group, having somebody that understands what is happening in the business is invaluable. Which leads to kind of my next point. One way that you can kind of start to get your IT staff understanding the business, understanding what happens within each function, is to run what I call the big picture series.
Mm.
And I've done this at the last couple of places where I've been. And that's where, and when we were in person, it used to be a lunch and learn. Now it would probably be a Teams meeting, but bring in the leader of the lines of business. For example, I was at a place where the IT staff didn't really understand what the AP function did, other than, they pay the company's bills. Right. So I brought in the AP leader to talk about, first of all, what does a typical day in her department look like? What technology does she use that the IT department is supporting? Right. So what are the financial applications? What were, the special check printers, all of that kind of stuff. And then what happens in her department when that application or those printers or, whatever technology isn't available, right? Help them, first of all, kind of feel a little bit of that pain.
Mm-hmm.
So that when someone from AP logs a help desk ticket, there's more of an understanding. And it's not just a surface level, oh, they can't print checks today. It's more like, oh, they can't print checks today. Therefore, we're going to make late payments. Therefore, they're going to have to work twice as hard tomorrow. Therefore, someone's going to have to come in on Saturday, if we don't fix this problem. So by helping them understand the bigger picture, more importantly, how they fit into that bigger picture and how the support that they offer, or, the integrations that they develop, or, the APIs that they're writing, whatever it is, just so they understand how that fits into the day-to-day functions of each separate line of business. And I have found that was, very, very successful and, eye-opening, really, because, someone who sits on your help desk potentially has no idea how accounts payable, accounts receivable, accounting, sales, any of those other organizations work.
Yeah, or the impact on the business that they're having. And
Yeah.
I think for Mitchell Merton, we recently became an ESOP. So it's an employee-owned company. And we did a similar exercise where, it wasn't necessarily IT driven, but, everyone has ownership in the company now. And whether you're, employee owned or you're not, there are implications to everyone's job. And when those things are going offline, if they can't cut a check, when they are paying late invoices or whatever that may be, those implications can add up pretty quickly depending upon the situation. And that could have some pretty detrimental, impacts on the organization overall, which ultimately affects everyone. So I love the big picture idea. I think that's brilliant, and kind of think like an owner, like how does this going to affect everyone?
Yes.
And having that perspective, I think is a huge game changer for sure.
Yes. It also leads, I think, to a little more creativity when solving an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's more like, oh, this group continually has this issue and I fix it every time, but how can I fix it so that it doesn't happen again? Or, how can I write a new piece of code, introduce a new piece of technology, whatever, to make this so much better for them? And so I think it broadens everybody's line of thinking as well.
Yeah, little empathy sometimes goes a long way too.
Yes, definitely. Another thing you could do, and again, this does not have to be super formal in any way, but is to implement some frameworks. Whether, on your service desk, if you implement either ITIL or ITSM frameworks, or, if you're in your development group, you adhere a little closer to the software development lifecycle, or, you bring in some agile methodologies, whatever you do, in my mind, the purpose of a framework is to move things along as scheduled, right? Or as they're ready, ensure that what you're moving along is correct and accurate. But the other thing it does, and where it's had the most impact, no matter what I've implemented, is that it gives the internal customer, or the end user visibility into the status of their request. So, if you have a company where your account reps are making requests for software enhancements based on the needs of their external customers, right? And it goes into the black hole. It gets added to the list of 500 other enhancements, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have no idea when it's going to get done. In most cases, it probably won't ever get done, or whoever is yelling the loudest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their work will get done. So by moving to an agile development methodology where we used sprints, 2-week sprints, 3-week sprints, we were able to schedule that work in. And what that did was it showed our internal customers, your development enhancement is slated to start on April 1st. The development sprint is 2 weeks. We'll be asking you during that time to run some testing once we've put it through our unit testing, and we expect it to be published with the software update that goes on April 20th. That alone, when you go from not knowing where your request is to having that scheduled and seeing, the visibility is amazing for your internal customer, but that starts to build trust as well, which is going to move you up that ladder from being in the basement, right? Now you're like upstairs, you're in the living room, you're hanging out, you're having conversations. And the trust that builds, really, that's where you start to become that trusted business partner.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of, if you put in a ticket and it sits there forever, you have no visibility into it, you don't know if they're working on it or not. You start going, why am I using IT? Why am I even going here? I'm just there, nothing's getting done, or, so just that component of it in and of itself it is getting done. Here's when you can expect to see it, managing those expectations of the internal, stakeholders and parts of the business. I think that takes the IT function just to the next level. Like you said, I mean, it builds trust, it builds that partnership. There's more buy-in. And from an innovation perspective, then you start to get people's ideas of, okay, let's not just fix what's broken. Let's make it better overall.
So that's a perfect segue. And I'm so glad, because the fifth point to executing a turnaround is internal innovation. If you encourage that, right? And what I used to do with my staff members was I used to give them 1 hour a week to go explore whatever they wanted to explore, something new, something we're not using here. And during the pandemic, when we were all home, I kind of broadened that a little bit. And I was like, go explore anything you want. You want to learn to knit? That's great. Because if knitting makes you a better coworker or a better spouse or a better parent, or if knitting gets your creative juices flowing, and while you're knitting, you're thinking about new ways to develop technology, that's awesome. But now that we're kind of beyond that, 1 hour a week, go learn something new. And there are so many learning platforms that are affordable. That you can $500 a year get you a subscription, and your IT staff can go learn anything you can think about these days. And by, even if they go learn something that does not seem relevant to your business today, in 2 months, it very well may be. And if the IT leader is having a conversation with a business leader about solving a problem, right? If the internal staff member has done some research and learned some stuff and brought that to the attention and said, oh, I think, robotic process automation could really help the category managers look up, I don't know, pricing on their items. Allowing them to go and research and develop their own skills will drive the innovation within the company. And that's then how you get to that top innovator rung where we all want to be.
I love that you said that, because there is when you have formal IT leaders going to the business sometimes with ideas of what they want to do, oftentimes there is some friction there for whatever reason. The change management component is always tricky in some organizations. But I think, to your point, if you have people within the business or within IT that, are just coming up with ideas and things that they're passionate about and saying, hey, I think this could really save your team a lot of time or a lot of effort, or could increase their employee experience. And thus, now everyone is feeling that excitement. I think that's where you just really start to see things take off, versus it always just being a top-down approach. Now we're coming from both angles and hopefully affecting the organization throughout, which is, I think, the next that where we all want to be, right? That's the dream. But like you said, there are some steps to get there. So
yes,
from your perspective, I mean, obviously we've talked about, how to identify, are you in the need for this type of a change? All right, we're in the basement versus the living room. Hopefully we're getting beyond the attic and moving into into the space above. But what can you expect as you make these transitions, as you make this transformation within the organization? What are the results? I mean, that's what the C-level is going to want to know.
Right. So what I've seen First of all, that technology foundation is now very strong, right? You are no longer building companies on the sand, right? Technology gets a seat at the table. So conversations about the company's growth are no longer centered to, just perhaps the salespeople and the finance people, right? Technology plays a part in that now. Which, the lines of business, the business leaders now have trusted partners they can go to, which will help revenues increase. Sometimes this innovation will drive a new product line. It will decrease costs in certain cases because, you will see that things will get more efficient as you bring in these new things, as you turn around the development enhancements quicker, as you're going through your service desks and you're getting people back to work more quickly, right? So you're going to decrease costs and your efficiencies are going to go through the roof as you start to apply technology to the business, but technology that has come with a true understanding of the business problem it's trying to solve.
I love that. I think that, we like to think that if there's an issue, people won't just stop what they're doing and wait for the resolution. But a lot of times that's what happens. They'll say, well, I can't do my job now because this piece isn't working, so I'm going to wait. And if you add that up over the course of, multiple reps, and I'm just thinking, for example, in a customer service, representative environment, if a system goes down, they're kind of stuck. They can't make those calls. They can't help the customer, and you might end up losing customers. So, not only reduce costs and increase revenue, but, avoiding loss across the organization, something that's very simple can have huge impacts. So I love everything that you said, Kelly. And obviously I think we could talk for another 5 hours on this topic and all of the examples that you've seen over the years. And, we were really lucky to have someone with your background who's been through this with multiple organizations and has become a SME in how to do this and the different ways to do that. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And for those of you that are new, like I said, to Mitchell Martin Live, we are always bringing thought leaders like Kelly to the stage to share their experience. All our true practitioners have been there, done that, got the t-shirt in many cases. And, give us a follow on LinkedIn. You can follow us also at mitchellmartin.com. Until then, we will see you next time with our next leader. Kelly, thanks again.
Thank you.